of trending up, right? This post-war boom, and then the breakup of Bretton Woods, which begins really in this period of the late 1960s. And I'm dating this to January '66 because that's what it seems to be indicated by the stock market movement. Right? We get the bottom in June in 1982, and so we're going to get this period in the 1970s of capital consumption, perhaps, but certainly not this sort of steady progress. And then we see this progress renewed in this second wave of the rise of the this reconstitution of the dollar standard to August of 2000, and the great moderation. You can see the 1990s, the steeper and less jagged movement, right? And then suddenly it seems to falter again. The dollar falters again, and we get this renewed stock market crashes, the dot-com bust, and then the Great Recession. And we're not really sure exactly what the fate of the stock market is going to be. Right? We see this sort of boosting again, but as we was talking about yesterday, this could just be the decoupling that we've seen over time of financial markets from the real economy, right? And not actual economic capital accumulation. And so that's the way I'm breaking up the periods. So the two faltering periods of the dollar, the collapse of Bretton Woods, and then this post-2000 movement. And hopefully that reorients your minds to the differences between these two periods. That's possible. The main difference between these two periods. And to see what the difference is, let's just look at some other between these periods in mind. We'll have a set of data set. So the blue is the annualized rate of change in the S&P 500 over these periods. These time periods we'll analyze. And the orange is the annualized rate of change in real private product remaining, which is the Austrian stand-in for real GDP. And you can see the difference. The two periods of faltering of the dollar, the periods of very low economic progress, and the periods where the dollar was dominating the world monetary system versus a reserve currency, and then people claim for it as an actual unit of account of calculation. We see much more robust work economic work. So that's why this time period is important. This is what I mean by the faltering of the dollar. Now let's add in the consumer price index. So this is the gray is the annualized rate of change of consumer price index over these 4 time periods. And you can see some interesting things. For example, the very extreme price inflation rates of the 1970s, the first faltering of the dollar, where it looks like it's on average annualized change in the consumer price index was around 7%. Great market. And then you can see that even though the similarities in the growth rate that I mentioned last slide, which is reproduced over the orange, you see that the rate of change of the CPI in the latest faltering of the dollar is quite low. It's on target, the Fed would say, close to 2%. So that's the main difference that I'd like to call your attention to. So how do we explain this? Well, it turns out we can't explain it by looking at changes in the money stock. So the now gold bars are the true money supply. And you can see again some interesting correlations, right? Which is in the first two time periods, 47 to 66 and 66 to 82, the annualized rate of change in true money supply is similar. And yet these two periods are quite different in terms of their economic growth. But more pertinent for this talk is that you can see, if you follow the next 3 time periods, following the gray bars, price inflation indicator, you can see that it is steadily decreasing. While if you cast your eyes over the gold bars in the last 3 time periods, you can see it's steadily increasing. So actually there's an inverse relationship between faster growth of the true money supply and the price inflation rates, but inversely related. And this again arrests our attention to the main point that I want to stress, which is, as we know theoretically from Mises' work, the rate of change in the purchasing power of money is determined in the same way as everything else in the market is determined by demand and supply. It's not determined by supply alone, it's determined by demand and supply. And so the question that we should pay attention to is, where's the demand for money? Where's the demand for the dollar? What's happening to bring about this result, given what seeming inconsistency to explain it? And well, okay, we know that the demand for the dollar is international, so we can split it between domestic demand and international demand, which gets us back to this very question that we're looking at very intensely over the conference. And in order to get to this point, I'm going to now turn to one of the great economists that specialize in the field of international trade and finance. And in fact, won the Nobel Memorial Prize for his work in this field. And this, of course, is none other than our friend Paul Krugman. And Krugman is the archetypical example of what Friedrich Hayek had mentioned in his Nobel speech, where he said that the problem with giving economists Nobel Prizes or Nobel Memorial is that it creates hubris, as Alex Pollock was talking about the Fed, and they think that they can pronounce on anything. They're expert in international, but they're not an expert in all other fields. Of course, this doesn't excuse Paul Krugman, who doesn't seem to even be an expert in principles of economics. That's a different question. But he said this very interesting thing. This is, by the way, a highly cited paper on the international role of the dollar that he published in 1984. He said this. He said the future of the United States monetary system is largely a political question, but the future of the international role of the dollar is largely an economic one. And again, I'd like to riff on this by saying that if I'm correct, that the dollar has become essentially the unit of economic calculation for engaging in foreign trade transactions, then it has a kind of status that it didn't have under Bretton Woods when it was merely a reserve currency. It's still a reserve currency, but now it's both, whereas it didn't have this status before. And that I think it's important that we entertain this notion to think correctly about the future of the dollar. Now, I'm not sure you can see this okay, but I've created this, lifted this from his paper. If you can't see that, this is the same thing blown up. So he gets this nice little chart where he says, look, the international demand for the dollar is both private and official under government. And then he lists these subcategories according to the 3 functions of money. It's a medium of exchange, an account, it's a store of value. And just for a brief reference here, it's easy to see perhaps what he means by invoicing on the unit of account, right? And a store of value, he's talking about banking's use of, foreign banks' use of the dollar in their transactions and so on. The vehicle part of this, he's talking about international use of the dollar as a medium of exchange. He's talking about forex exchange and actual foreigners holding banknotes and things like this. Now, in 1984, he concluded that it was still the reserve position of the dollar that was the most important source of international demand for the dollar. So he was still on the right-hand side, under this thinking that that's what we have to focus on, is the reserve status of the dollar. But actually, again, I would suggest that we need to remove it and incorporate this other element. So let's take a look at the evidence that I've compiled for this. This is from Barry Eichengreen, who put together a compilation of the currency composition of international reserves from 1947, also beginning of Bretton Woods, up to 2015. And you can see the solid line that moves up from the beginning is the U.S. dollar. So you can see how it rises against the pound, which is the dashed line that's going down. It's replacing the pound as the most important foreign currency reserve unit. As you can see, in about 1966 or so, it reaches a peak. USD as a percent of the foreignly held reserves reaches a peak, and then it falls. And then it rebounds again. It goes back up to about 1973 or so. And the break in the data set is because the compilation of the data was different. So there's a break there to indicate this. And then you can see it begins to fall, just like it's been doing over the last 2 decades. The percent of foreign exchange reserves by central banks that are held in the form of dollar assets fell from about 1977 all the way to 1992. But remember what happened, it's crossing over these two periods, right? It's falling at the end of the first faltering period of the dollar, and then it continues to fall steadily through the rise of the dollar in the 80s and the 90s. And so it's not really very well correlated with what's actually happening to the dollar's status internationally, and therefore what's happening to the purchasing power of the dollar, and so on and so forth. So we should be, my claim is we should be too concerned in the latter part of the drop-off of the dollar. Now I'm going to go into the evidence for the status of the U.S. dollar as a unit of account for economic calculation. And this is from Rudy Judson, who makes an estimate of the actual demand for U.S. currency against the percent of all holding of currency, domestic and international, of the dollar at home and abroad. And here you can see the solid black line is the estimate of all denominations of currency. And you can see it sort of follows the same storyline that I'm suggesting. It's flat in the 1970s to the early 80s, and then the banknote holdings of foreigners start to increase as the dollar rebounds, and then it decidedly increases in the early 1990s, and then it starts to falter again in the late 90s. That little blip is Y2K. Remember that? Remember the good old days when that was the thing we worried most about, Y2K? And then it sort of stabilizes or falls again in 2007 when the dollar's faltering again, right? We get these business cycles and so on, and then it starts to pick up again and rises again. So this is some evidence of better correlation than we have in reserve currency holdings. This is way better the correlation with the data sets we looked at before. Now, this is the foreign holdings of U.S. dollar banknotes. This is the Forex exchange, right? I'm sorry, this is the continuation of the last slide, where we take the data out to 2023. And you can see it's still rising, right? So the previous graph stopped at 2016, just to settle the point. This is the foreign exchange turnover by currency, and you can see it's steady. The foreign exchange by currency, is the figure of 90% or 80+% says that on almost 90% of all foreign exchange transactions, the dollar is on one side of the trade. And that hasn't changed. That's been stable, right? And this is the share of export invoicing. Remember, Krugman said, let's look at invoices, let's look at vehicle holdings, right? So very high and stable percentages of dollars in invoicing in the Americas, in Asia, in the rest of the world, everywhere but Europe, where the euro dominates. This is international banking claims. Steady, right? The blue line at the top is steady, dollar holdings. This is liabilities of the banks. International bank liabilities are still dominated by dollars. And this is the share of foreign exchange debt issuance, where we do see some drop-off, right, of the dollar's share in the recent period. And so what do we conclude from all of this? Well, my conclusion is that we should take this into account. I think the data speaks to this issue, that the dollar has really become more important in international trade and has in fact become a medium of exchange for foreign trade, transactions for exchange in foreign currencies. Because of course all businesses would like to be able to do their accounting, international trade accounting, in one currency, right? And so the dollar dominates this, and it gives a greater hold of the dollar's importance internationally, and therefore the demand for the dollar internationally, and support then of the dollar continuing as a in its status as an important international currency, regardless of what happens to its reserve status. Now again, I don't know what this means for the Death Star blowing up or not blowing up, but I think this is an important element in our thinking out exactly how the future will play out. So thank you very much for your kind attention.